Orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self-actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. Vixen in the boardroom. In my work, I am a big proponent of the idea of amplifying sexual polarity in couples and in singles, which means that I am anything but gender neutral. I believe that humans are happiest and most at ease when they explore and embrace the gender and sexual characteristics and energies they are born with. So that's women accepting and amplifying their feminine energy and men their masculine energy. In the over 3 decades of me doing this work, I have never seen it to be any other way. Meaning when men are hiding out in their feminine energy, they are miserable. The cultural conditioning over the past decades, and I'd say the last 50 years or so, has been to shame men for their toxic masculinity and to encourage them to eschew any typical male behaviors. We've also encouraged men to get more in touch with their feminine and emotional sides, which is great, but not at the cost of giving up their strength and power and ability to defend their families and communities. Primal masculine energy. It's been said that the only toxic masculinity is the absence of masculinity. And I agree with that. Real men don't hurt women, they honor and protect them. And when women are trying to live their lives using their masculine energy, they become resentful and burnt out. They put on a kind of false confidence, a projection of strength that isn't authentic. They prop themselves up to fight the good fight, when, as the saying goes, they could catch more flies with honey. If they were to dwell more in their feminine softness, they would attract and magnetize the opportunities and solutions they're looking for, not through a sheer force of will, but through their receptivity and their serenity. Because we associate masculine energy with drive, ambition, taking action, and getting things done, women often wonder, how do you actually achieve things while you're, quote, in your feminine energy? And how do you do this, especially in a situation like a job or a workplace that is typically dominated by men? These are all concepts we dive further into in my Well-Fucked Woman Salon. How to really open up into your feminine energy, let it drive and guide your life, letting go of the pressure to activate your masculine will, often because it feels the most familiar, and let surrender guide your direction. Today's episode explores all of this and more. Annette, our well-fucked all-star, articulates it so well. She works as a CEO in high-level positions, and she's found how the more that she's connected to her feminine and her sensual, wet, and orgasmic, no-panties wearing self, she is more successful and achieves more than ever. Well-fucked all-stars! Welcome, Annette. It's great to have you.
Hi, Kim. It's great to be here.
So you've had quite the journey, and we would love to hear all about it. And you began with coming together, and then you took the Well-Fucked Woman Salon. So a couple of the things that you'd shared that I loved were, number one, as soon as I was well fucked, the calls started to roll in. And then two was going from breaking up to fucking like rock stars. So fill me in on the details with that and anything else in between.
Yes, I'm happy to. Well, I absolutely love the Anami world, and I've practiced on my own through self-pleasure a lot of what you've shared with the Anami world for years. And that I found myself in a relationship where there was a lot of challenge to connect. Um, in intimacy as well as sexually. And I looked at your salon schedule and thought, perfect, coming together is happening. I'm going to join it on my own and really see,
So,
where this can lead me.
so when you say on your own, you were in the relationship with this person, but he wasn't receptive to this. Why did you choose to do it on your own?
Yeah, so he was really struggling with intimacy and sexuality in our relationship, and I was seeking to evolve myself and the relationship. So I took the step to join Coming Together and mentioned it to my partner at the time in passing, and he said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Can I join you?" So by the very first Coming Together group call, we were participating together.
Excellent. Okay. So he's on board. You're both
Mhm.
involved in coming together. So what happens next?
Well, we did the first group call, and I'll describe this one in detail because there was a fantastic shift that occurred, and it was the energy of the women and the men on the call. So we joined the first call, and there was definitely on his side, I would say, an energy of like, okay, this is what, my partner wants to do, so I'll do it, right? And at the end of the call, he looked at me and said, I think this is what I've always needed. And really felt that, the topics that you were discussing about blocks and fears, and I think the voice of the men in the salon really created, I think, a safe space to be vulnerable. And we practiced our first connection date after the first group coming together call. So that is not the order that it should have happened, right? We should have done our homework and had that happening, but it happened anyway. And there was some radical honesty shared in that call that changed the trajectory of our time together completely. There was vulnerability about fears and, my femininity and what I was offering in the relationship because of blocks that existed for decades in a past relationship. And there was so much healing and just saying it and owning it and sharing it together. And there was a very clear understanding between us that, he had to do the work to heal that wound, but I was here to hold a safe space and heal together.
So the recognition of those blocks that you're referring to right now, they were in him more so?
The block that we talked about specifically after that group session, yes, there was a fear of touching and interacting because there was so much rejection in his past. And so one of the things we did after that connection date, and it was because of the connection date, right, where we could have that moment to say, here's what's going on, right, in a space where we're talking, right? We're not in bed trying to, have sex and be intimate. We're just talking. And that just naturally led to doing, right? Where then I could be like, well, let me just show you what's here. Nothing to be afraid of. Touch, explore. Like, I am open to you. And there were just phenomenal leaps forward in our trust and our connection. And that led to so many other blocks that I think I wasn't aware that I had. Maybe I'm not sure about my partner, but we worked through those block lists. And honestly, when I looked at the block list in the links in the salon, I thought, well, there's nothing really to talk through here. But it was so surprising how when we went through the blocks and just talked about the topic and our experience with the topic and our belief in the topic, every single time there were blocks that were surfaced and we could work through them together on every topic, which was shocking to me because some of those topics I thought weren't even in my life, but yet they were.
That's amazing. And I love that even through the beginning of a conversation with conscious and open intention to whatever comes out, that these things can just come to the surface. That, as you say, we don't even think are issues that we have no inclination that they would be. And yet, when we put that loving spotlight of attention and illumination on them, they feel safe enough to emerge and to be alchemized.
Yes, and even interesting, right? That it was like, oh, we became so interested in each other, right? And what is your experience? And how can I be a helpmate? And how can this help us dive further together? The more experiences we had in being honest and healing together, the more interested we were in doing it again. So it was, yeah, it was very fascinating. And I want to say as well that we were only a few weeks into a relationship when we dove into this. So I had, some false beliefs like, oh, we're new, so the glass is clean, right? And what we realized is we kind of walked into the relationship and threw like decades, boom, onto the glass. And I had this realization that, oh, wow, glass clearing is just as important at the beginning as it is at any other point in a relationship. And to me, that was really eye opening as I thought about my life journey and any relationship in my life.
I love that. I love that both of you were open enough to dive into the salon material, which is a heavy duty investment, commitment right early on in the relationship. That's a beautiful level of willingness and openness to both commit to that degree.
Yes. Um, well, he said to me very early on, I recognize that being in a relationship with you means a vibrant sex life is necessary. I was like, yes, fuck yes.
Yeah, right. Nothing less than.
Yes.
Beautiful. So you Okay, so you start out with some uncertainty, not as deep connection. You're committing to the practices, so when we talk about block clearing, like a big part of the Anami process is the realization that we all have baggage. We all have an accumulation of baggage. And as a way of life, I would say in the Western world, the idea of stop, drop, and heal isn't really part of the collective ideology, right? It's more like hide, suppress, use substances to push your feelings and experiences down. Now, I'd say in the wellness world, there's more of a focus on the idea of looking at trauma, healing trauma, and moving on, right? But in the modern everyday vernacular, I don't think that's the case. So I love that. So, part of the Anami lifestyle is having a fully open communication policy and style in your relationship and a commitment to radical honesty, to speaking the truth, expressing the truth, leaving no stone unturned, right? Especially with topics that relate to the integrity, the fabric of your relationship, right? You might have other areas where you cultivate deliberate mystery, and that's a whole other conversation. But for things related and pertinent to the relationship, it's so important to have that policy of honesty. So I love that you guys were committing to that and going forward with it. So, what other kinds of changes did you see in your energy, in your chemistry? You talked about some polarity shifts.
Mhm. Well, there's definitely, as the intimacy deepened, as the sexual experiences that we had became um, more involved, more adventurous, more open to what we were both desiring, there was so much peace created, so much anchoring and who I was and what I was seeking in life. But it was that peace and safety that got created that was so noticeable. And I think it absolutely changed every part of my life.
Great. And so, what did you notice happening in your career, in your trajectory, in that part of your existence?
Yes. So in my career, I had a lot of beliefs that I was 5 or 10 years off from a more senior role, that leading or starting a company wasn't something that I could do. And the more that we played, and the longer that we played, and the more adventurous we got in our play and our honesty about what we were seeking, and our trust in one another, the more interviews started to roll in. And at first I thought, oh, this is just a coincidence. It was not. Um, I was getting calls from everywhere, from venture capitalists, from former colleagues, from recruiters, for roles that were senior to where I was. And ultimately, what ended up happening is a company that I had created a few years prior that was just kind of trickling along in the background. I realized, oh my goodness, I need to approach this thing with the energy that I'm approaching to my Anami practices, right? I need to take hold of this energy and this venture and see what can come of it. And we got the venture funded. I'm leading the company now. I get calls from investors that they've heard about what we're doing and they want to meet. Okay, that's crazy. And um, yeah, there's more to talk about as far as what these phenomenal orgasms and intimate connections can create. It goes beyond work. There's more authentic connection with friendships and family. It just happens because you're more in your heart, you're more in your body, and every single time you're interacting, or every single time I'm interacting with people in my life, I'm doing it in a much more authentic way, and a much more transparent way, and a much truer way. And amazing things have happened, right? Parts of my life that I thought, oh, I'll never see that part again. I'm an avid sailor and boater, and that has just come right back into my life. And I've been joking around about the name of the boat, calling it PBO. O is an orgasm, PB is the type of boat.
I love hearing that because something that we see with the generation inhabiting of our sexual energy is that that's the life force. That is the signature, the blueprint, the essence of who we are. And when we begin to inhabit that more and more, we start to find that our outer life is becomes filled with, we magnetize, we naturally somehow find these opportunities and experiences that align with our vision, our dharma, our passions in life. It just starts to happen. And so that's always a really powerful sign when I hear that from people, that they are indeed inhabiting their sexual energy, because we see that alignment happen in their outer life. And for some people, it means they actually will quit a job or vocation that they weren't particularly in love with, that they were doing more to pay the bills, and find themselves doing work that's more alignment with their soul purpose. Or, in your case, say if you're already in a line of work that is aligned with you, those things just start to fill up your life more and more hobbies, more experiences, like you said, even dormant passions that you might have put aside that suddenly make their way back up to the surface again. And it just happens. It's not like we're making a list of what are the things missing in my life. You just start to find that you manifest these opportunities, or you magnetize them, or those thoughts happen and they just kind of congeal in front of you.
That's right. It's the more I'm in my heart and my femininity, the more I can see the honest passions that I have about life. And for me, that's yes, to dabble in my career and to create in the world as an entrepreneur. There's even a natural hair product company that's kind of come into my life, which is so exciting and way outside of what I used to do. And it's so me, but it's more than the relationship, it's more than business. To be in my ultimate femininity changes everything, because there is this belief that women need to be masculine and tough to be in the world or to be successful or to be entrepreneurs. And it's when I'm in my femininity, right? And I'm in a, you know, right now in a mini skirt, no underwear, and my little tank top, and I'm feeling so feminine and my hair is down, but I am rocking it in the world, right? And the world doesn't necessarily align with that. There's these beliefs that to be in your ultra femininity means you can't pursue other things, or this world won't open up those paths. And I think that when you're really in an intimate connection and there's an amazing play, that self play with myself and my own intimate connection, as well as with a partner, it really busts so many of, I think, society's beliefs of what men and women should or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I love that. I love hearing that you're in a high-powered job and like top level corporate situation, and yet you're saying that the secrets to your success are the amplification and really owning and living in your feminine energy. Because you're right, in the last number of years, I remember me growing up, even, it was this idea that in order to be successful in the world, especially in the corporate world, you had to emulate men. You had to become one of the guys. And I love that there's been this full on 180 around this for women to recognize that, well, I think through experience, realizing that they were all getting burnt out and adrenal fatigue through trying to amplify their masculine energy to achieve things, but not even knowing it was possible to be in their feminine energy to achieve things. The process is different. The outcome is the same or better, because we're not going out of alignment in our own essence to get these things done.
That's true. It really resonates with me. Absolutely.
So you became more polarized and comfortable within your feminine energy, really activating and living in that place. What happened to your partner with his masculine experience? Did he have the same kind of thing happen?
Oh, absolutely. And it was phenomenal to watch and be part of that transformation. Um, there was, an interest in stepping up, in leading our play, and being creative, in exploring in areas where, we hadn't played together or one or the other had never gone before. At one point, I said, this is really phenomenal what's happening here. I'm concerned, right? That like all of a sudden we go back and like there's a shutdown on your side. He said, oh no, like I've ripped the door off. The bolts are gone. The door got thrown in the front yard with like a sign saying, someone take it away and don't bother me. We're fucking. So there was such a masculine leadership that showed up that was not there at the beginning, and man, it was attractive and just such an honor to witness.
Beautiful. So let's shift into today then. What's happening for you in your relationship today?
Well, the partner that we've been talking about and I are no longer together. There was a conscious uncoupling. And because we had been practicing the radical honesty and the connection dates, it was quite peaceful. And in fact, there was so much love in the uncoupling. The reason was very simple. I have a medical situation and medical needs that must be met. And we knew right from the beginning that that might be a challenge. And there was just a point where we had to come to realization that with what we both wanted to do and what we both wanted to experience in life, that those needs couldn't be met, and that there was very good reason to go our separate ways.
Right. And so you are in a new relationship now.
I am, yes.
How is that going?
It's going very well. It's very different than any other relationship. And I really am curious about that because I see this as something striking, just as striking as how I've embraced my femininity and how my career and passions have kind of merged into one. This is a relationship where there's a very strong masculine presence right from the start. My femininity has tons of space to be out there and to play. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of depth that was found right away. We've both done quite a bit of work and self growth in our lives. And this partner has participated in the Anami Land. So that was such a surprise, right? And at the same time, not at all.
Right. Okay. And so he did the sexual mastery for men's salon.
Yes.
Right. And then, so how did, like, what kind of shifts did you see in your relationship as you went through that work adjunct, right? Or together, but
Mhm.
primarily his focus there. And how did that manifest in your connection? How did things get up leveled?
Yes. So when we were first together, there was a lot of hesitancy on my partner's side to interact and to be intimate. And I really didn't know where that was coming from. And I knew enough from all the work that I had done in my life. And in the Anami salons, that there was something there to heal and to um, remove a block. So the transformation was like a fear of intimacy and really clearing past experiences to allow for the present experience to come through and be realized. We saw each other for a very short period of time, and very quickly there was, you know, a discussion about taking a break because I didn't quite understand what was going on and it wasn't aligning with how a relationship, the depth of intimacy and the exploration that I was desiring in a relationship. So a little bit of time passed, and we came back together just recently. And this was a transformed man, right? That he really could express his heart and share with me his feelings. He was very open and in pursuit of sexual encounters together, and just such passion, right? Bringing so much passion to what we were doing, whether it was a conversation or life getting planned or experiences as we got to know each other physically.
So you've talked about seeing how your up leveling of your sex life has had these powerful shifts in your outer life. So what kinds of things transformed for you in bed in terms of your orgasmic journey? What did you notice there?
Yes. Oh gosh. Kim, my orgasmic journey is such an interesting one. And, you know, in coming together and hearing the women talk, I realized that this transformation had happened without it being as much awareness, maybe, as it is today. So when I first started doing the Anami work, I would have an orgasm maybe once in a play session. And I didn't even know what type of orgasm it was, but I thought, well, this is great. I had an orgasm. And as I did my own heart healing and spiritual healing and Anami work over the years, it's been 6 or 7 years now. Now I pop off orgasms like, honestly, I could be sitting and talking and I hear my partner's voice and it's just the right depth of tone, and bam, I can like have an orgasm sitting there. In fact, I didn't even think that was possible. But when it comes to the depth of orgasms, there is a freedom there that was never there before the work, the Anami work. And I can have 50, 100 orgasms in a play session. I can choose what orgasm I want to focus on, whether it's cervical or a G spot or clitoral, breast orgasm. I think I can even have a neck orgasm.
Whoa.
um, and they just roll one after another. It's so beautiful. But in in these orgasms, in getting to a place where there were multiple orgasms and very deep orgasms and very many different types of orgasms, I had to learn, this is my experience, I had to learn how to create safety for myself. That there is a boundary I had to create for myself to say, I am choosing to be here. I am submitting to this play. I am choosing to be vulnerable. And in choosing that, I am creating a safe space for myself, right? That I did have a place where I would understand what I needed out of my partner as well to have very deep and passionate sex. But the expectation and that need was not projected onto my partner. It was something I had to bring to myself, that no matter how I was playing or what I was choosing, I was taking care of myself. And in that experience, there was so much more I could do to open up and be vulnerable and submit to whatever play or adventure was happening.
Fantastic. So, with these orgasms, you have this great fluidity and skill in these various orgasms. What else did you notice change about yourself as a woman, especially with the deeper vaginal orgasms?
Mm. Oh, well, the changes were on many different levels. So there's a softness to me and a patience to me and the ability to love, to put love out into the world that wasn't there before. There are physical changes. My breasts are bigger, my waist is smaller. It's it's striking and it's very real. My hair gets shinier. And all of this is happening as I'm aging, right? I'm 49. I'm coming into the land of, you know, perimenopause and menopause. And the whole world will tell you that this is a time where I should be drying up and nothing should be happening for me. But it is the opposite, right? I feel more youthful and more gorgeous than I ever have in my life.
Tell me more about that because I just put a post up today where I was on Instagram where I was having a go at these people, these shills who are all about taking hormones like it's an essential thing. You're not going to be able to get away with not taking them now for the rest of your life. You're doomed, you're cursed, right? And basically my response to that is, yeah, well, you're underfucked because well-fucked women glide literally with their own naturally generated lubricant through menopause. They orgasm their way through it because they're building what I consider, and this is my non scientific study, but backed up by a lot of anecdotal evidence, research that when women are well fucked through this period of their lives, they glide through. It's like they're generating their own hormonal reconfiguration via the amplification of their sex hormones, right? Through all of the pleasure and orgasms that they are cultivating through this time in their life, they don't suffer any of these symptoms and downturns at all. In fact, it can be, as you say, the opposite, where they're fully fueled through this time of their lives, and it becomes one of deeper, because now you've got all the wisdom that you didn't have as a 20 or 30 something combined with still juicy sexual enlightenment happening, and you become this incredible powerhouse. So tell me more about this because inquiring minds want to know.
Yes. So, it's interesting too, because I'm a scientist. So I have a PhD in immunology, and I'm an N of one, I guess, in my own experimental life right now. and can say, this is real. What's happening is real, right? The more that there is self pleasure and letting go, the more that there is a sexual play with my partner, I will notice very specific changes in my hormones and in how I'm presenting through these changes in life. So, for example, there were some really good play sessions recently, and my cycle had been kind of off and wacky, as it can get as you're going through perimenopause and menopause. And like clockwork, it came back on super strong, let me know, hey, I'm getting this wash of, hormonal um, it, all through my body, and I am feeling peaceful again. I'm feeling happy again. In fact, these hormonal washes through good play, and they don't, it's not just right after play. I mean, we're talking weeks through my whole cycle. I am seeing the wash of hormones and the shifts and the pleasure of it all. There are times I actually feel euphoric because the hormone shifts are so pleasurable in easing my cycle, right? Because that cycle can get very jagged if you're not playing and not practicing orgasms as you're going through these changes, right? The cycle can kind of disappear or come at different times or be change the flow. And through all of the self play and play with a partner, there's just a smoothing out of the entire process.
So beautifully said, and it's so great to hear. And I love that you have that self-awareness to hear, to feel those shifts and to attribute them to the sexual flow. And that, I refer to that, like the sex hormones, as the master hormones. And when those hormones are flowing and they're elevated and, self actualizing, then they lift everything else up in the system. And then the opposite happens, right? When women are not being well fucked, they're not living with pleasure, the medicine of pleasure, the medicine of orgasms, then it's like a black hole that sucks everything else into it. Their sex hormones are obviously low level, but then everything else, stress hormones, everything else gets sucked into that hole of dysfunction, of living in a diminished state. So it's beautiful to hear that, and even better that you have a scientific background and lens that you're able to not discount the veracity of your own experiences in favor of, well, I need a study from a corrupt medical journal to back that up,
Oh, it's so true. And in coming into the practice of orgasms and intimate connections and allowing that to flow in my life, there has been a shift towards natural in my life, right? Which means getting away from pharmaceuticals, getting away from chemical-based products. And as I pull more and more of that natural living into my life, which I think most scientists would tell you, like, oh, don't do that. Um, there's so much more space for the body to regenerate and to do what it needs to do and to be healthy. And that's so critical in this perimenopause and menopause journey too.
But that's the thing that floors me, is that the whole notion that we need to medicate women through menopause basically for the rest of their lives. Well, it even starts at puberty, right? Of putting women on hormonal birth control. You go off it briefly to have some babies, then you go back on it, but oh, now we're in perimenopause and you're meant to take it again until you die. There's actually a menopause doctor out there these days. I put a post about her on Instagram who has said she will die with an estradiol patch on. That is her mission in life, to be on these hormones forever and ever. So the fallacy, the insult, the patronizing of women to say this, like the complete lack of faith, and I have to say it, the self-hatred that speaks to, right? That you think women's bodies are so disgusting, dysfunctional, they need to be babied and taken care of because they couldn't possibly find a way to be healthy and exist without being sedated and medicated like cattle, chattel. it's disgusting. I can't believe that's so many people buy into this narrative, right? That women need to be medicated through this time. And I love that through, and this is my argument as well, is that when you become well fucked, you get smarter, you get creative, you actually have a better lens of truth with which to see and feel these things. The truth that's now flowing through your own body, because underfucked idiocy, which is a real medical condition in Anami Land, starts to get thrown out, right? You're like what you said, the washing through yourself. It's a cleansing, a deep cleaning of this debris, this toxicity. And the real toxicity is a lack of self-belief, a lack of faith that you can heal thyself, right? This internalized toxicity, shame, whatever it is, right? On an emotional, and then it becomes a physical level that we now transcend and recognize that we have all this power. We need to be well fucked to be smart and creative, to power and, rock it through this time in our lives. And yeah, and we have all these tools simply through becoming well fucked. And in Anami Land, being well fucked means we're owning and inhabiting our sexual energy.
Yes, it is so true. It's like the greatest meditation ever. I've practiced transcendental meditation my whole life. And when I'm doing self play or playing with a partner, there is a kind of a reconnection with myself that happens. And when I'm out in the world, it's like being in the matrix, right? You're like, whoa, everything's so clear, right? That I can create and I can understand and I can see past all the BS. And one of the things that really became apparent to me is that this journey of life is to be embraced as a woman. I love where I am right now. I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, wow, look at all that gray hair. Wow, look at this. Look at what my body is doing, right, on this journey. And I don't want to suppress it, right? I want to enjoy this entire journey of, you know, aging as a woman. And it's gorgeous. And when I look at the aging process through that lens of being well fucked, there's so much beauty and wisdom in it. And there are things that I can experience because of that journey that I couldn't experience when I was younger.
Yeah, I agree completely. There's a level, for me anyway, I feel like in my 40s, a level of confidence and surety, and where I could get to a place with men as well of like, take it or leave it. Like, this is me and this is the way I'm doing things. If you don't like it, then we don't need to be together. Like, we can part ways and find more suitable companions. Um, so yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to add to this story? Anything else about your current situation?
Oh, not that I can think of right now. It's just what I have embraced in my life through the Anami practices are truly breathtaking, and the depth of intimacy that gets created and how fulfilling that is. That this part of my life is so bright and so alive in ways that, decades ago I dreamed, right, that this was real and had no idea how to embrace this, how to become what I am today. So, thank you for this entire journey that I've been on with you. I really appreciate it.
I'd love to hear
Okay.
you expand on the paradox of you being in a high powered career position and yet having been able to really stay with and inhabit your own feminine energy in that place. Is
Mm.
there anything else that you could share? Because it's a huge question for women, right? Is that seeming incompatibility, and how do they do that? Do you have any advice or anything else you could share about that?
Um, yes, we can definitely dive in here. So, let's say early in my career, I absolutely bought into coming to the boardroom with masculine energy. Um, even to the point I recall back in 2007, I showed up in the same outfit as my boss, who probably he wouldn't have called it an outfit, but I had on gray pants and a very masculine structured shirt and a black belt. And we looked at each other and said, who's gonna change, right? Obviously it wasn't me, it was gonna be him, it was gonna be me. um so there's the dynamic playing out. And I I even bought into that hostility towards other women in the corporate world that were feminine in a beautiful dress or a pair of heels with their hair down. I'll admit that today, right? And there's a lot of amends that I had to make with myself because of that hostility that I brought into the corporate world. So through the Anami practices, through becoming well fucked, through rolling orgasms and going more into the polarity and femininity that is so natural, I think one of the most striking pieces is I didn't have to try anymore in the corporate world. If I was embracing my femininity and I'm embracing who I am, then I didn't have to perform anymore, right? It was no longer an energy that I had to like summon before going into the board meeting or before a really important or demanding day. There was so much more ease, just like the ease and the flowing orgasms, right? That if I'm in my heart and I'm in my femininity and I'm speaking the truth, there is no flip into an alternate energy that I need in the boardroom. It's exactly the same energy. I am in the energy of being present, of being passionate about the topics being discussed, of being creative and thoughtful and radically honest about what I'm hearing in the boardroom about, you know, data readouts or strategic decisions in the corporate place. It's no different than the radical honesty and the presence and the passion and the vulnerability that I was bringing into my play. And I think that was the big aha moment where I started to see really magnitudes of change in what was happening in the business part of my life, is that it was the opposite of what I always thought. I thought I had to try and I had to perform and I had to be this other person when I was at work and then transition into this other person to be in a relationship. And that moment when I realized, oh, I'm in this wonderfully well fucked, juicy place. I'm not leaving it. Right. And I had to
Right.
I am not leaving this. And so I'm bringing this into the boardroom, right? And I'm telling you, the boardroom loves that energy. So
Tell me,
it
wait,
was,
wait, wait. Tell me more about that. The boardroom loves that energy. Tell me how the people, the men especially, responded to you.
yes. Okay. So this is another, I think, like myth that got that I was like, oh, well, if I bring all of this femininity and this sexuality and, I'll say it, I'm wet all the time, right? I'm dripping, it's running down my leg. It's part of my life, right? And who I am and how I flow now through the day. And I had um, this myth or this belief that if I brought that into the boardroom, that it would be taken advantage of, it would be misunderstood, it would be inappropriate. And this gets back to the same boundary I was talking about earlier, right? When I'm playing and I'm enjoying, I'm creating safety for myself in that and vulnerability, but I also have appropriate boundaries to that. And that's another realization. And taking that energy into the boardroom is that it is there and it is for the purpose of discussion and thriving in business conversation. And I can have all of that energy and flow and juiciness to me without being inappropriate in interactions, right? And so the boardroom loves it because there's no confusion for the men in the boardroom, right? They're like, oh, she's a woman. She feels like a woman. She looks like a woman. There's not that underlying conflict there where I was walking into the boardroom like a man and it creates irritation because they're like, I don't get what's going on, right? And so when they're interacting, there's almost combat that got created because of this tension that was there and confusion that was, just there. And when I came in my femininity and glowing and bright and present, there's no conflict, right? It's like it's very clear, right? What I'm bringing into the boardroom. And now we could just put that aside and get to the business.
I love that. And, we've definitely seen that in the realm of polarity, where if you walk in there as an alpha male and you butt heads with the other alpha males, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be tension, it's going to be a bristling energy. But when you walk in there as a woman, then yeah, the men, it's a different kind of energy where men will actually aim and have a visceral response to be of service to that feminine energy instead of compete with the masculine energy that you bring in to the table, right? So I love hearing that. So essentially, once you drifted in there, wafted in as your feminine, beautiful, radiant self, I'm assuming that all of these interactions went so much more smoothly and beautifully and even harmoniously and were enjoyable.
Absolutely. There was just an ease that got created and so much more openness, right, in the boardroom. And that feminine energy anywhere in the world creates so much love, right? And the masculine energy creates so much care and protection. And by coming into the boardroom in my femininity, I was also elevating what everyone else in the boardroom could bring to the table as well, right? So then
How
we're now
so?
talking
how
about,
how
yes,
are you
so
elevating that?
so the men, rather than being in conflict, are now in a place of providing and protecting everyone in the room as well as the company, right? So we're talking about a boardroom, we're talking about corporate leadership. So we're naturally talking about needing to lead a company. And while we're taking care of each other from an energetic perspective, there's so much more that could be accomplished from corporate leadership perspective, and that the men were now at ease to provide and protect for that feminine energy, but also for the discussions, right? So there's so much more creativity and openness and willingness, right, to put effort towards, to think of ideas, to implement, to take risks together. That when you were stuck in that combative place, you can't be leading as freely as you can without that combat.
What I love about that is that it sounds like coming in with this masculine energy creates a distraction and a diversion. Like it's almost that energy then superimposes upon whatever problems need to be solved and addressed because it's so present in that space. But when you walk in and you're in the feminine, it's like the feminine and the masculine are then working together with their own innate strengths to solve these problems and bring to the table their own innate qualities that then fuse together and make you stronger as a whole, rather than, as you say, the combativeness of some unnatural order, even, right? Of like, and you described it well, of this idea of needing to put on armor, right? Put on something, put on some kind of what we conceive maybe as a masculine posturing to be part of that group, of that enclave. Whereas the opposite, where you not putting that on, but instead embracing and really coming out as your feminine self, is the lubricant that's needed in this entire scenario, or even lubricant and ignition, right? A fire starter to help things even move faster to the next level.
Absolutely. And, there's another, I think, belief that exists that if you come in with that femininity, that somehow you're exploiting that femininity or using it to manipulate. And I couldn't find that farther from the truth. You said it perfect when you said the masculine and feminine energy then in the corporate leadership in the boardroom start to come together, right? And create equal contributions in what we're doing as leaders of a corporation. And that is absolutely true. So then, the tension between the energies is no longer there, and it just gives way to so much freedom, not unlike what happens in polarity play, right? Where you would never say because you come with your femininity and polarity play that you're not participating, you're exploiting the other side. That's not true at all, right? That is just a necessary component to put the puzzle together and have a clear view, right, of the picture.
I remember years ago when I was working, there was a legal issue that I was dealing with, and there was a woman lawyer was my main lawyer, and I went to have a meeting with her and this other more junior lawyer. And I walk in and she's beautiful, right? I'd spoken to her on the phone a ton, but I hadn't met her in person. I'd seen a photo of her on the website, and she was like beautifully feminine. She was wearing something that was professional, but still feminine. Like I was really struck me that she hadn't put on the corporate suit, masculine outfit, right? And she had some cleavage even, and this beautiful hair. And I was like, whoa, that's actually a weapon. Like but it was a very authentic place. It didn't feel manipulative or at all. It just felt like she was being herself, the way we've been describing, that she wasn't putting on something or trying to hide something. She was just allowing who she was to be there in the space. And I felt like it just brought this whole, and the respect that she commanded and the desire for these men to serve her was palpable in the space. Like she commanded this whole other, much higher degree of respect, service, that I feel like had she been in this inauthentic place, wouldn't have happened.
Yes, completely agree. And I've often asked my partners about this, right? Like, what happens for you at work, right? When someone shows up to a meeting and they're, very gorgeous and, and they'll say, oh, well, it's mesmerizing, right? Because they're so beautiful, but then they're saying so many intelligent things and it's so helpful. And I become then consumed with the ideas and the thoughts that are being put forward in that meeting. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's good to hear, right? That the view of what the masculine energy is saying about that feminine energy that walks in. Never once have I heard them say, oh, the whole meeting I was so distracted because she was so sexy and beautiful. And no, right? It was almost like what allowed them to gravitate to the thoughts and the decisions that were being made and really allow that to transform the discussion that was happening. So that's a great thing. It's interesting because when I think back to when I was in the performance of that masculine energy, that performance went on for so long, for so many years, that I had divested out my femininity completely, right? The wonderful um, experiences that I have in my heart, in my body, were so repressed from that lean into masculine energy for so long. And I'm really grateful for that transition and the willingness to start to bring that back into my life.
That's fantastic. And the way that you were describing that made me think of alchemy, right? Where these substances, energies combine to create a greater product than there was to begin with. But that alchemy can only happen in truth, right? Rather than artifice. So, how that's so beautiful. So, I'm so glad to hear all of that, and you've articulated it so well, because I think it's such a mystery for so many women, and there's so much programming out there, and fear perhaps, and uncertainty, and the fact that you've really been able to own and embrace this and then see that play out and get the feedback, get the affirmation that, okay, this is right, this is the right path, is beautiful. So thank you for sharing all of that.
And one of the topics that we hit on was the journey to very deep orgasms, multiple orgasms, multiple variety of orgasms. And it didn't just happen automatically. It was a journey, and there was a lot of self love that needed to happen on that journey, and a lot of patience and a lot of deep work. And deep work just can't be rushed. You heal and you work through the wounding in your time, when different healers come into your life, when you find different mentors to guide you through experiences and wounding, and it happens in the time that it happens. But one thing that I really noticed in my journey, into femininity, into myself, and finding these deeper orgasms is that the further that I went into honesty with myself about my wounding and where that came from and what that was and how I went about healing it, I could see a parallel in my orgasms, right? And more orgasms showing up, that they got deeper, that they started to show up in variety. But it didn't happen automatically, and there was no switch. There was no day where, one day I was having a clitoral orgasm and the next day I found a cervical orgasm. There was no order. It was kind of little spurts here and there at the beginning, and maybe it happened and I was like, oh, what was that? That was interesting. Right? I want to let go and feel that again. And so there was a lot of deep work in the journey, a lot of self love, a lot of self pleasure, to lead me into the pleasure with partners, and as well a lot of letting go once I had found safety for myself in my own life, in my own heart, in my own place as, ultra feminine. Then I learned in play how to just let it go. And I still to this day can't find exact words to describe how, how that little fire starts, but it does. And it's like, oh, that orgasm felt good. I'm just going to let it wash over me and enjoy it. And in that present moment of enjoying the orgasm, the next one just comes. It's less about forcing it and finding it and more about letting go into it.
Right. And I often use the phrase, if you build it, they will come, right? So all of that internal and sexual feng shui of clearing space, trauma, wounding, baggage, ideas, beliefs that we've accumulated over the years. Again, it's more about removing those things than, say, gaining a certain amount of skill and technique, which can be helpful here and there. But it's really that innately we all have this. Right? That's why I talk about the Anami guarantee. Every woman can, every man can. All of these things are accessible to all of us. The reason why someone may not be accessing them is because there's some blockages in the way. So we remove the blocks. And yeah, for every person, that timetable is different. And so much comes down to their own commitment. Like, are they dialing it in, or are they truly committing and throwing themselves into that? And we hear over and over again with the all-stars that we talk to, those people have taken this on and run with it, right? They weren't casually like, okay, well, maybe next Wednesday we'll have a sex date and we can, it's everything. Right? They are prioritizing themselves, their sex lives, the rehabilitation and elevation of their relationship to the top of the list of what they do. Right? And so with great work comes great reward. And that feng shui piece of it is so huge to clear that space, to allow what is innately in all of us to emerge.
Yes, absolutely. And it was a commitment. I mean, for me and my journey, there was a lot of wounding. I was bullied very bad as a child, and there was a lot of lies that I took on about not being pretty, being poisonous, not being of any substance. And, at one point in my life, those were completely subconscious, right? I didn't even know that that wounding was there and needed to be unearthed and healed and nurtured. And through doing that, for me, it was not only the Anami work, but also work outside of that, right? So working in different retreat settings. I got very alternative about how I, went through my healing journey. And it was a full-time job at one point. I thought to myself, wow, I don't even know how to keep the job going in other parts of my life, because I was diving in so deeply to understand the wounding and to heal it and to know myself better and to come to my authentic self. And so much of what I practiced in coming together in the connection dates and the radical honesty, I realized, oh, I had already done that in my healing journey with myself, right? Connecting with myself and being radically honest with myself and creating that safe space for myself.
Beautiful. I love it. Anything else you want to add to that?
Oh, no, but I'm again so thankful for the work and the journey, because it's fantastic to have many, many orgasms and many different kinds. And to know now even which orgasm I need for what's happening in my life, right?
I love that, like a self-prescribing of orgasm medicine.
Yes, absolutely. There are days that I am like, oh, yes, some deep cervical orgasms like can really bring me to where, I want to be today. Or there are other days that, there are other types of orgasms that I can just feel that kind of deep knowing, that bubbling up. But that openness and that connectiveness, it's all circular, but through the intimacy, through the play, through the release of the orgasms, there is so much more I understand about my body and the desires and what bubbles up. And then I can, with no inhibitions or hesitations whatsoever, just pursue them, right? And then the day just opens up even more.
Let's say you're feeling a bit sluggish and tired. What kind of orgasm would you prescribe yourself?
Mm. Sluggish and tired is more of like G spot, cervical, kind of like coming back into that brilliance and alive. There are other moods where I'll be completely transparent here. If I'm really struggling with something and I'm really stuck, or I am in kind of like a gooey, ugly energy or emotion, anal orgasms are incredibly important to me, to just like, it's something very animal, very matched to that tough energy. So it's like, I allow my body to say what I need. And it's interesting because when I am in that like kind of sluggish or sad or some other place where my light is a little bit dim, I can tell you, like an anal orgasm, for example, would not work there, right?
Right.
It would almost be too harsh or too abrupt from where I am and where I'm desiring to go. So there becomes a very clear understanding, and it's not always clear, but if I, allow some time and allow something to bubble up, I can understand more what I'm feeling and experiencing, and becomes more clear and honest to me about how I can play with my partner or do self play to move to a new place.
Got it. So, kind of an angsty, even angry, frustrated would be anal prescription.
Yes,
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I love it. My Well Fucked Woman Salon opens next week. The main theme in this 10-week online program is the art of surrender. Surrender is the key to unlocking the deeper vaginal orgasms like G-spot, cervical, and squirting, and learning how to live in your feminine energy, so your orgasms and your feminine power fuel your life. In the salon, I help you to open up and to let go of the blocks that prevent you from tapping into these power sources. I go into depth and share my own personal journey in the art of surrender, in particular, a relationship where I went deeper than I ever had and came into balance with my feminine self, learning to truly open and be vulnerable, and came out stronger and more confident than ever. I will show you exactly how to have the deeper vaginal orgasms, which are what will help you to burn through the dross of your life and elevate yourself into your highest potential. You can get on the list to be notified of when we open the doors. In the meantime, you can sign up for the free preview video series where I dive deeper into feminine power, vaginal orgasms, and becoming a well-fucked woman. Go to kimanami.com/wet. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and send somebody else the gift of a multi-orgasmic and transformational love life by sharing this episode with them. If you'd like to go deeper into all things orgasms, sign up for my free Orgasmopedia series where you'll learn about 9 different types of orgasms everyone can have. Go to kimanami.com and you'll see the sign up there. Come one, come all.